Hi, my name is Matt, and recently I told my friend about a project that I finished a few years back, and I told him, hey, I could share one of the clients and we could actually play. He was down for it, but I had a bit of a hunch that something might have gone wrong, so I decided to test the game locally, and I was unfortunately right. The clients no longer worked for some reason, which made no sense to me, but regardless, it sent me down a spiral for over a week where I was working on a project I wasn't supposed to be working on because I had so many other things to do. But regardless, I remade the project, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. It was supposed to be a single update to just quickly fix everything and add a few quality of life things, but I am a bit of a perfectionist, and as I was working on the project more and more, I just got so many ideas, and I ended up doing 5 updates. But regardless of if it was 5, 6, or 1 updates, why won't I just tell you guys what the game is? Well, the game is Martian Chess, and unlike all the other projects that I've worked on for this channel, this one actually has visuals, and since game development is probably my biggest and most loved hobby, I'm very happy to announce that it has visuals. I'm quite proud of them. You're probably seeing it on screen right now. It's a lot of the visuals are from all the way back then, a year or 2 ago. It's very pixely, but that's exactly what I was going for. I hope you guys like it. Anyways, what is Martian Chess? You hear the word chess, yet the visuals that you just saw looked nothing like chess. What is that board? What are those pieces? Well, I'm going to explain them to you briefly. And we're going to move on to the explanation corner. But yeah, I'm going to be very brief about it. And if you want a more in-depth sort of tutorial on how to play this game, there's a video that I will link in the description, and this is actually the video that I learned from originally. So if you ever want to refresh your mind on how to play this, and you have the executable running around and your friend wants to play, just watch this video instead of coming back to this one, because these guys taught me, so I feel like they deserve your view a little more than me. Now, I would say that Martian Chess is easier than regular chess, but you do need to rewire your brain a little bit, especially if you've played regular chess, because the way that the game plays is incredibly different. Almost like it's alien or something. Martian Chess offers 3 unique, different types of pieces: pawns, drones, and queens. Pawns are worth 1 point, and they can move diagonally in any direction. Yes, they can even move backwards. Drones are worth 2 points, and they can move horizontally or vertically 2 squares, so they're sort of like limited rooks. Queens, on the other hand, are worth 3 points and move identically to the way that they move in regular chess, which is kind of crazy. But basically, your main goal in the game is to get as many points as possible, and the way that you do that is by capturing your opponent's pieces. Now, since you've seen the visuals already, and I'll show them to you again, you might be wondering, what is my opponent's pieces? All the pieces are the exact same color, and that's a good point. In chess, you would expect to see white and black rather than all red. And the thing about this game is that which one of these pieces are actually yours is, it's not as simple as it is in chess. You don't just look at the color, you look at the side of the board that the piece rests on. If it's on your side of the board, you get to control that piece. And if it's on your opponent's side of the board, they get to control it. Which means that your pieces can become theirs, and their pieces can become yours. You capture a piece by putting your piece on your opponent's side of the board on a square where another piece already resides. Now, there is one rule though, that you can't perfectly undo your opponent's move. So if you push a pawn to your opponent's side of the board, they can push it back to the exact same square from which you pushed it. And there's also another rule called field promotions, which is where, let's say you don't have any queens on your side of the board and you want to get a queen, or you want a drone and you don't have one. If there are less than 6 of the piece that you're trying to promote to on the entire board, then you're allowed to combine 2 pieces that have together the same value as that piece. So you can combine a pawn and a pawn to get a drone, or a pawn and a drone to get a queen, and through that you can create that piece by capturing your own piece with your own piece. And the final rule that I have to talk about is calling the clock. If you feel like you're at a stalemate, you keep moving something and then your opponent keeps moving something and nothing is really happening anymore, you can call the clock. And if a capture happens after you call the clock resets. However, if there are no captures, the clock doesn't reset, and after 7 moves, the game ends. Unlike in regular chess, this game doesn't necessarily have draws, so if you and your opponent end the game with the exact same number of points, whoever played last wins. Which means if you call the clock and no captures happen after that, and the game ends and you and your opponent have the same amount of moves, since you wait out 7 moves, you actually played the last move. So calling the clock is actually very beneficial. I hope I didn't forget anything. I'm pretty sure that's all the rules. And next you're gonna see games from yours truly and a friend. In total, Sheriff and I played 3 games, and his goal wasn't to win 2-1, that would be a little ridiculous. His goal was to win a single game, something that he had never really done against me before. It must be regular chess skills that seem to transfer over to this variant of the game, even though it's so different, because I don't play nearly enough to explain the skill difference between Sheriff and I. Now, me personally, I love watching games where losing dogs seem to pull through, so if you're curious, stay till the end. The games are actually pretty interesting. We're gonna go over the first game in the most depth so that we can sort of get the hang of how it usually plays out. And if you're ever confused with who is winning because you've never seen this game before, of course you haven't, first of all, listen to what I'm saying. There are no engines in this game, so maybe the things that I'm saying aren't completely accurate, but I'm sure they're accurate for the most part because I'm speaking as somewhat of an experienced player who understands some strategies from having played before. And another thing that you should pay attention to is a little thing on the left of the board, a little number which shows you your point advantage. The higher that is, the more likely you are to win. So since you're watching things from my perspective, if it's in the green, it means I'm winning, and if it's in the red, Sheriff is winning. Anyways, let's get into the first game. Picking from Sheriff's point of view, this game was a little rough. Now, in the beginning of the game here, I thought I was really cooking. I pushed my drone to that square because I was staring down 2 pawns, meaning if one of the pawns moved, the other would be captured, and if neither of the pawns moved, I would just capture the pawn in the front. I really thought I was cooking, but the Sheriff hit me with the most logical counter, which was this pawn move over here. Yes, I can still capture the pawn that I was just staring down a second ago, but Sheriff can literally recapture with the drone that I just gave him and just retake the pawn, and all of a sudden the advantage is back to 0. This is the most important thing about Martian Chess. You have to remember, once you push your piece to your opponent's side of the board, it is no longer your piece, it becomes theirs. Now in the game, what I did is capture his pawn, and then he recaptured on my side. Now the thing about what we're looking at right now is my position is better because the pieces on his side are sort of just scattered everywhere, while my pieces are pretty collected. My goal here should be to sort of get my queens out because they are the most stuck out of all the pieces on my side of the board. So in this position, I hit Sheriff with a fatal move, which employs the exact same strategy that I was trying to employ earlier, but this time it actually works. Here I stare down a diagonal where there is a drone and a queen, and loss of material is inevitable.
I think I'm screwed, dear.
Yes, Sheriff, you are. Now, as much as I'm bashing on Sheriff's position, there are a few things he could have done to preserve some points. The drone isn't completely free. What he could have done is push his drone to my side of the board, and all of a sudden, if I capture his queen, which, yes, I do for pretty much free, he gets to capture the drone he just pushed to my side. All of a sudden, I gained 3 points and he gained 2. Yes, I'm at an advantage, but it's only 1 point versus 2 if I just capture the drone. Instead, he played the following move, ruining his position even further because after I move the queen in the front out of the way, all of a sudden the pawn in front of his newly moved queen is completely pinned. I threaten to capture that pawn with my queen, and if the pawn moves out of the way, I capture the queen behind it. So it's It's very bad, and his position is in absolute shambles at this point. And I say that this is horrible because now I can literally just capture the drone, and he can't even use the queen I just gave him to recapture on my side. He can't capture the pawn because I will just go and capture the drone, and all of a sudden, he's just losing. After that whole ordeal, I decided to push my drone to his side of the board. The goal is to clear out my side of the board and keep long-ranged pieces like the queen. And another goal is to make his position absolutely crammed because after my drone move, there's very little that he can do without losing material. And I followed that strategy with this beautiful move, absolutely cramming the front lines of his position. And there is a big problem here. A strategy to do with Martian chess that is very different from regular chess is that you don't want more than one queen on a single file or diagonal. On this file we see 4 queens on his side of the board. That is very bad, and the reason is that file is completely unusable by him. If he decides to push one of his queens on that file to my side of the board, I can push it back and capture the queen that was just behind it. It is horrible to have 2 queens on the same file, even more horrible to have 4. After this though, Sheriff actually played a very intelligent move. He pushed his drone to my side of the board. All of a sudden there are 2 drones on that file, which is incredibly weak, and the way that he pushed the drone into my side of the board is bad because it can't move to anywhere that's actually safe. And remember that I can't just undo his move. That's one of the rules. I can't undo my opponent's move. After all was said and done, the material advantage was actually back to 0 for me, meaning a win from Sheriff was completely possible. Here you may say, why don't you just capture the drone on his side of the board with the queen that you just gained? The thing is, if I capture the drone on his side of the board, the queen is just gonna swoop back in and captures the drone on my side of the board. So the thing is, material advantage is really back to equal, but my position is significantly better. Very quickly I managed to take advantage of the fact that my position was better and I won a pawn. Now when I say that my position is better, I'm not just throwing that around as a buzzword. The thing about having a better position is that it allows you to win material. It makes it almost impossible to defend against you winning material by your opponent because your position is just significantly better. You have better moves, you have more opportunities. Following this exhilarating turn of events, Sheriff immediately blunders a pawn. Now here, after I capture the pawn, putting me back at +2 advantage, if you look at the geometry here, Sheriff can't recapture the pawn on my side because that aligns on the same file as his queen, and I would just capture his queen. At this point, I'm guaranteed to win. At this point in the game, Sheriff just straight up blundered a queen. And I missed it. When I first looked at the footage, I was so incredibly upset, but I'm forgiven. It was a little late. It was around midnight. My brain wasn't completely functional. I had done a lot up until that point. Point is, my position was still so much better that it was pretty much impossible for Sheriff to play anything without losing material, and the game didn't end up lasting much longer after that, and the game ended with me winning with a +2 advantage. And now I don't want to bore you to death, so the following games I'm gonna discuss in a lot less detail. I'm just gonna try to grab all the fun parts for you. Whereas the first game was played with infinite time, this one was played with 5 minutes on either side with a 3-second increment, meaning every time someone played a move, 3 seconds would be added to their clock. Very quickly in the second game, Sheriff was immediately facing the same issue he faced in the first one, a rough position, but at this point it was very savable. This game I had the advantage of starting the game, playing the first move, so since I had more tempo, he just needed to play defense. Some interesting things actually did happen at the beginning of the game, but at the end it ended with an advantage of 0, so let's just talk about the first thing that sort of changed the tide side of the game, and that would be Sheriff blundering a drone. This is just a clean blunder. After I take the drone, he can take a pawn on my side of the board, sure, but then I can take the queen on his side of the board, and in the perfect line, I end up with an advantage of +2, or maybe +1. Again, there are no engines for this game, so I'm only sort of speculating and estimating, but I'm winning. At this point in the game, I'm already winning. Here, I hit Sheriff with a fork. The idea here is that I'm threatening both the queen and the pawn, and if the pawn captures, I get to capture the queen if I want to, and if the queen captures, then I get to just capture the pawn and the position is equal again. But this was actually a bad move by me. If the queen were to capture and then I were to recapture the pawn, all of a sudden the queen on the second file can swoop in and capture my pawn, and that would bring me down to an advantage of +1. Thankfully though, Sheriff didn't notice that and instead blundered his entire queen. Now let's actually not waste any more breath on this game because not much happened afterwards, and when you win an entire queen, like, what is your opponent supposed to do, right? I ended up winning the game with a +4 advantage, but I will give Sheriff some credit because it seems to me that a lot of his moves, a lot of his bad moves were just sort of under time pressure. Yes, he had like 3 minutes when he played his first bad move, a whole ass drone blunder, but he doesn't really know how to manage time. And it's kind of evil of me that I decided to do time control. I should have given him infinite time again. I retract my statement because I don't think I was cruel enough with the time control, because when I gave him the option of picking the time, he did 3.14 minutes with an increment of 4 seconds because he wanted to be funny. And just like his time pick, he wanted to be funny with his strategy. He decided to employ a strategy from a bots that he had been playing online, but the thing is that there are no good Martian chess bots online, not that we could find at least, and that just means that his strategy was ass. What he ended up doing was just shuffling the same piece back and forth forever and ever until he saw a good move. It didn't work out for him, and very quickly I had a +2 advantage very early in the game. Now, as much as I'm bashing Sheriff, I also need to bash myself a little bit. I know it's very unsportsmanlike, but during this game, I had lost so much faith in Sheriff's ability to win that I was literally in the middle of the game texting a friend. I know, I shouldn't be doing stuff like that, especially when I'm doing something for a video, but I was very distracted, which is an excuse that will come into use very soon. Things kept happening. Sheriff kept blundering, one blunder after another, and eventually I ended up with a +3 advantage. And now is the part of the game where I get to use my excuse. You see, I was chatting with my friend, having a jolly old time, and all of a sudden, Sheriff hit me with a queen blunder, and I replied to the move very quickly, not realizing that he had hung 3 whole points, and I counter blundered my queen. Out of my +4 advantage, I just gave up 3, which would bring Sheriff dangerously close to potentially winning the game. But thankfully, there was a drone on the end of that godforsaken file, and I got 2 of the points back, putting me at +3. Soon after, I called the clock and won the game with a +4 advantage, but the point is, if Sheriff had played a little better, and if there was no drone on the end of that file, I would have lost. It's a little embarrassing on my part. I hope you enjoyed those games. And now if you're coming to me saying, Mads, I'm completely sold, how do I set everything up? Well, let me explain to you. You go to the GitHub page, and this project is open source, so you actually have 2 choices. One is trusting me that I didn't compile the executables with some sort of a bomb, and you just download the executables and play through those, or alternatively, you can just download the code and compile it using the Godot executable. That way you can actually look through the code and see what it does. You can literally just read through everything. I hope that I actually start posting more frequently now, and I apologize for disappearing on you guys, for all 2 of you that care. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. where I learn how to breathe underwater. Bye.